She's like, hey, this is an incurable progressive disease. You're going to have this the rest of your life.
Did you ever try the metformin? What happened
Absolutely.
with that?
I'm not taking drugs the rest of my life. Like, I was just not going to do that. Even in New Orleans, where sugar is everywhere, it is not particularly difficult for me to live this way. If you take nothing away from this interview at all, here is the sentence.
I'm sure a lot of people listening are either wanting to beat diabetes or they have a loved one that has diabetes and they want to help them. So, what does your system look like exactly?
Okay, so the basics of it go like this.
Before we begin today's episode, I would just like to take a moment to thank you for being here and for subscribing to the Heal Within podcast. Your support truly keeps this show going and it helps it to reach more people who are on their healing journey. I'm so grateful that you're listening. Chris, take us back to that moment in 2017 when you were first told that you had an incurable and progressive disease. What was that like?
It's a funny story because of all the things that I ever thought would change my life, a screwed up life insurance renewal was not on my list. Um, and it just happened to be that my agent changed companies and things got screwed up, and so I had to take the blood test you take for like life insurance twice in the same 12 months. Just kind of the way things worked. And the first time I was totally normal, no sugar issues, all that kind of stuff. And then the second time, my A1C, which is the and a lot of your listeners will know this, but in case they don't, that's the average monthly amount of sugar in your blood. And so that's on the normal end starts at 5.7 and lower, and diabetes starts at around 6.5, 7, and I was at 9.1.
Oh, wow.
And
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 sorry to
so
interrupt,
in
but does that change each time that you take it, or that's your average
it,
for the
it
whole month?
it's the average, so it's a rolling average. What it really means is when you let's say you go and you have a cup of coffee and you put a bunch of simple syrup in it. I was just thinking about that because I was in a coffee shop a little bit ago. The simple syrup, which is all sugar, is going to force a blood sugar spike. Now, if your pancreas is acting normal, it'll secrete a bunch of insulin, and the insulin will bind all of that up, and the sugar will get dissipated pretty quickly. If you're diabetic, what will happen is that spike will continue up, and it will just keep floating around your body, and it damages your internal organs. And that over time is what makes diabetes a dangerous disease, is because the spikiness, and it hurts your internal organs. So in my case, the average, and so they use A1C because it basically over a rolling 30-day average, roughly that amount is what it measures. And so it's used by doctors a lot as kind of because during the day, your normal blood sugar will go up and down constantly every second. While we've been talking, both of our blood sugars went slightly up and slightly down. And it's just a constant movement. So it's not as useful a measure as A1C. So anyway, so my A1C went from normal the year before to really out of control 12 months later. And that scared the hell out of me because if you do a little Googling on that particular set of symptoms, what you're going to see is rapid onset type 2 diabetes. And the most likely cause, albeit a small one, is pancreatic cancer. And so I was scared to death because at 47 or whatever, 46, whatever I was then, that would definitely, I wouldn't be talking, right? If I had pancreatic cancer, I'd be dead already. So
Wow.
that got me moving, I think, in a more dramatic way than if I just, most of us, you go to the doctor and they're like, hey, Chris, you really might want to take it easy because they see your A1C over time and they see it's going up a little bit. That's what most people have. In my particular case, mine went from totally normal to totally not normal. And so I think that is what really spurred me to action more than any other thing. But so I went into, my agent was like, dude, you need to go see a doctor. So I went to go see a doctor, and she's like, like all primary care physicians, she's like very matter of fact and perfunctory. And she's like, okay, well, here's a prescription for metformin. If that doesn't do the trick, we'll get you some insulin and then we'll, kind of treat it from there. And I was like, wait, what? And
Oh.
she's like, hey, this is an incurable progressive disease. You're going to have this the rest of your life.
Now, at that point, did she diagnose you with diabetes?
No. So the interesting thing there, because I was like, I'm not a diabetic. She's like, we'll just treat it like it is. Right.
Yeah.
But the truth, from a medical standpoint, having two A1C tests within a 60-day period, or 60 or 90, I don't remember which it is, over seven is the definition of diabetes. And so, at least the way we clinically diagnose it.
So that's all it takes. And it's just like a snapshot of your blood sugar.
Correct. And that's why, like, so for me, um, I was hell bent that there would never be a second test where my blood sugar would be high. And so I researched and researched and researched and researched and tried everything I could and cut every form of sugar and every type of thing that would metabolize into sugar out of my life. Um, and over time, over a period of months, figured out the thing that I wrote about in my book, which was a way to control your blood sugar without drugs and without extreme diets. So in my case, I got down to under six within 3 months. And when I went and took my second A1C test, and of course I'd taken 5 or 6 at-home ones at that point, it was not quite normal, but close to normal. And within 6 months, it was normal or low, and it's been there ever since. And the book is about how I do that, like what it is that I'm approaching food as that's controlling my blood sugar all this time, because that's 8 years now. So yeah, but that's the moment. There was, sitting in that doctor's office a few blocks from my house here and going, man, I'm not taking drugs the rest of my life. Like I was just not going to do that. And and like you said, I think the fact that when I first did the research and it was like, you might have pancreatic cancer, I was like, oh boy. I mean, it was a big smack in the face and a big wake up call.
Yeah, that's scary to hear. Just to reiterate, you went from a 9 to a 6 in 3 months.
Yeah, a little less than that. Yeah, roughly.
Wow. Okay. Did you go back to your doctor and were they?
No, I got rid of that doctor. And the reason is, frankly, I needed a medical professional who would help me. And most primary care physicians in the United States, that same day, that lady probably saw 25, 30 patients, something like that, right?
Yeah.
She had 10 minutes with me. I needed, since this was my life, and I was like, this could kill me, and I need to really take this seriously. I went and got what's popularly called concierge doctors, but it's basically like a monthly fee you pay and you get access to a doctor. And that doctor, she has been amazing and really helped me validate some of the things that I was reading about and then give me some ideas about what was happening, and be able to interpret test results and stuff. That was super, super, super helpful.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about my brand new community. If you have acne or eczema and you're ready to start healing your skin naturally and want a little extra guidance along the way, I would love to invite you to join the Clear Skin Collective. It's my private community for women who are on their skin healing journey, where we focus on real, lasting results through food, mindset, and daily support. You can learn more and join us at evolvingwithjessica.com or by clicking the link in the show notes. I'd be so happy to welcome you in. Back to the episode.
So yeah, so I got rid of that doctor because I needed somebody who would help me. And primary care physicians, who I have nothing but respect and love for, they just don't have the time the way that we have our medical system set up right now. And so I'm sure she wanted to help me, but she was, like I said, 10 minutes, and then it's like on to the next patient.
Right. Yeah, it seems that they each have a different type of training. Like there's the Western medicine and there's the functional and doctor and then there's like the naturopath. It sounds like yours was more of like a functional and naturopath.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, so here's the basics of my books. If you take nothing away from this interview at all, here is the sentence. It's very simple. Soluble fiber controls blood sugar spikes and can reverse diabetes. That's it. And that is not a new magical research topic. People have been talking and writing about this since the early 70s. This is not a, oh golly, we just figured it out today sort of thing. This has been known for a long time. And there's a number of research studies that are longitudinal going 20 plus years showing this. And basically, what it means is soluble fiber, which is broccoli, Brussels sprouts, chickpeas, all that kind of stuff that gums up the works, slows down your digestion. And in slowing down your digestion, the sugar spikes don't happen. And when they don't happen, you don't get the negative effects of type 2 diabetes. Your A1C goes down, and it basically gives your pancreas a break. And by giving your pancreas a break, over time, you become less what's called insulin resistant, which means that your body doesn't respond as well to insulin anymore. And that reverses diabetes. And so it's just changing what you eat.
Does that mean that the person listening, if they're thinking, oh man, so all I can eat is soluble fiber, I just have to
No,
eat
no,
all day?
it's no, it's yeah, correct. That's a great question. So no, what I mean is, and this actually, there is some cool new research on this that I was actually doing the right thing, but I didn't think of it. Really wasn't thinking of it this way, and that's the progressive eating thing, right? So if you start the meal with soluble fiber, and I do it because I'm a very practical human being. I need simple rules that I can follow. So for me, I treat 1 gram of soluble fiber and 1 gram of sugar or sugar effective sort of food. So like rice and stuff that turns into sugar as the same, like kind of offset each other. I don't actually know that that's accurate, but that's how I do it because I got to have something that's easy. And I gave the example the other day of on my Instagram of going to a sushi restaurant, and I love sushi. It's one of my favorite meals. When I go to a sushi restaurant, I order edamame. I put down the entire bowl of edamame. That's got to be 5 or 6 grams of soluble fiber at least. And then the rice that comes with the rolls or on the sushi is absorbed. That basically that soluble fiber absorbs it. So I still have the thing I want, which is sushi, right? But I'm loading up on soluble fiber ahead of time, right at the beginning of that meal, as a way to slow that down. And there's actually, what I was saying, there's some interesting research came out earlier this year about the progressive eating thing where I was doing the right thing, but I didn't know why. I just felt it was the right thing to do. Um, because in the studies that start in the 70s, what they did is they started giving people high soluble fiber diets, and they noticed that those people so they did a bunch of different diets, all this, all that, all this, and one of them was very high soluble fiber. And what they noticed was people who were on that one, it knocked down their A1Cs a lot, and most of them went into remission, about 80%. And so this is a pretty big number. Like 80% in science that's pretty darn impressive. The interesting thing is it's largely been ignored by the medical establishment because it's not it requires you to eat differently, and most people will not eat differently. So for me, what I was trying to do, and this is why I like this particular way of eating, it doesn't require me to say no, I will not have any carbs. It doesn't require me to say, oh golly, I've got to order something special off this menu when I go out with my friends, right? I can go to almost any restaurant, and that's what I do on my Instagram feed is I do these like little reels and I sit down at different restaurants in town and I go through the menu and be like this and this because it's always there. And so that's basically the nuts and bolts of it is soluble fiber at the start of a meal makes the difference.
Okay, you eat whatever you want to still. You didn't really
No,
change.
no, no, that's not accurate. So I don't
Okay.
have chocolate cake.
Okay. I was
Like giving up sugar sources that's kind of table stakes if you want to control your blood sugar. Like you can't be, like I said, I can't have, and I'm not going to have um, sugar in my coffee, right? I'm not going to add sugar into my life.
now
Just
what about something like honey?
well, honey is the best of the glucose equivalents, right? But it's still sugar at the end of the day. But again, it's really about the balance of yeah. I mean, if you're going to have a sweetener like that, honey's clearly, and I happen to dislike the taste of aspartame and NutraSweet and stuff. So for me, like some people, like my mother-in-law, like is a loves all those the kind of artificial sugary taste that tastes sweet to her. For me, it tastes kind of hollow, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't taste right to me. So
Yeah.
I just kind of forego it. But it doesn't mean that I give up all sweets all the time forever. Like when I have my birthday, I have a piece of birthday cake. I have a small piece of birthday cake. I still do have birthday cake.
Yeah.
I just try and balance it all out, and I think that's why doctors don't like it. Or not don't like it. That's not fair. They won't prescribe this kind of way of looking at things because it's so much more straightforward to say, here's some drugs this will definitely do, and then I don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to be able to follow instructions. So it's from a medical standpoint, I get it why doctors don't care for soluble fiber in the way that I do. But for me, as somebody who doesn't want to take a bunch of drugs, um, that was the way out, if you will.
Mm. Okay. Two things here. The first one is I'll rephrase my previous question slash statement. So
Sure,
you eat whatever you want within reason,
sure.
and all you changed about it was the order of which you eat the foods.
And also which foods. So, for example, one of the big things I do is I understand, and this was the education part, and this is in the book. It's very straightforward. This is not any magical things. You could Google all this up, but it's important, which is understanding what foods become sugar,
Oh,
like
okay.
where sugar lives in your average meal is really easy to understand and it's really important. So I love baked potatoes. Love them, love them, love them. They're one of my favorite things in the whole world. I love French fries too. Basically, potatoes in general, I love. Unfortunately, potatoes are all sugar. That's just the sad fact is that baked potato is a giant sugar bomb. White rice is a giant sugar bomb. Stuff like that. So you just have to get a little educated on those things, and that helps guide your decisions. And the important thing is once you get into it, honestly, after the first year or two, it's like a background hum to me. I don't even notice the food choices I'm making because I'm just doing them naturally. And there's some weird ones. So like, and this is why education's important in this. And it doesn't take a lot, but sweet potatoes, actually not a high source of sugar.
Really?
Go figure. They're called sweet potatoes, but
They're
they're
so
not.
sweet.
But good old fashioned baked potatoes, right? Terrible for you from a sugar perspective. That's the important detail. If you're controlling for sugar, the soluble fiber foods are amazing, right? So those are your go-tos. But then there's some you just got to avoid because they're going to turn into sugar. So like I said, baked potato, white rice, and I outline all of these in the book. But they're not hard to find once you know what you're looking for.
Mm.
And then to also understand the difference between soluble fiber and regular old whole grain fiber. Because whole grain fiber is great for your digestion, great for your gut. It's all of that stuff. It doesn't do squat for sugar control. And so whole wheat bread, terrible. I mean, not terrible. That's not fair. It's better than white bread, right?
Okay.
But it's still going to turn into sugar because that whole wheat, your body can't digest stuff like that. And that's why it's good for your gut, is it kind of cleans out your gut and helps you regulate your digestion, but it won't slow sugar absorption in your blood. That's what
Mm.
soluble fiber does. And so that's the difference. And so it's really just getting educated on types of food because at the end of the day, all you're doing is using food as medicine, which is what my friend Eric, who wrote the forward to my book, uh, was telling me for years because I was also an inveterate sugaraholic. I mean, I was a sit down and throw down a sleeve of Oreos kind of guy. And but Eric would tell me food is medicine, and he was spot on that.
Mm. The other question I had was about around the birthday cake. So, what if you were to eat some broccoli before the birthday cake? Not that sounds
Yeah,
awful,
I mean, it would
but
help, and I certainly would, right? So I live in
okay,
New Orleans, and New Orleans, I mean, we have an entire season called King Cake season, right? So I mean, a whole season dedicated cake. I mean, one of its many, many nicknames for New Orleans is Sugar Town. So everywhere I go in my daily life, there is sugary sweets everywhere. And that is challenging. It makes it a very challenging environment to kind of eat the way I eat. But even in New Orleans, where sugar is everywhere, it is not particularly difficult for me to live this way. It's very, very straightforward. And so, yeah, I'll have some king cake, right? I definitely will. But I'm definitely having a whole bunch of beans or broccoli or something like that at the beginning of that whole little escapade. So, like when I know I'm going to a friend's house for Mardi Gras parades or whatever, it is going to be a bunch of king cakes, and I'm a big pushover, so I'm definitely going to have some. Um, I'm gonna skip so like red beans and rice, the classic New Orleans dish. I'm gonna
Mhm.
skip the rice and just go with the red beans,
Okay.
right? And so, which doesn't bother me at all. Or if I have a little bit of rice, it'll be like a little spoonful of rice just to kind of make it feel like red beans and rice. But at the end of the day, uh, the key is it's like Ben Franklin: moderation, 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 moderation. Yeah, eating this way? Can I have some sweets? I can. Yeah, that was your question. But having those sweets, if I do have them, it's going to be pretty small. And the weird thing is, I'm sure you've had other podcast guests talk about this. When you get sugar out of your life in a big way, you stop really wanting it. It's weird. So like here's my cup of coffee from this morning, right?
Mhm.
If I get that and they screw up and they put sugar in my coffee, it will taste heavy and kind of gross to me. And it didn't used to. I was a let's pour some 5 or 6 sugar packets in the coffee sort of person. But once you get away from that world, it just stops being a craving. I don't know any other way to explain it.
Yeah.
You just stop. I mean, it's not that I don't love sweets. I do love, like I love king cake, right? But if I had like more than a piece, I'm not gonna feel great, and I so it just stops that desire. Weirdly, I don't know any other way to say it. It just so it's almost like a drug. You like once you kick it, it's kind of kicked, um,
Mhm.
in a
I,
way.
I noticed that with my own diet shifting over the last 5, 6 years, is that my taste buds changed. And I
Hmm.
think that's what happens. I think our taste buds actually change and adjust to what we're eating. It's
Yeah, and
fascinating.
I did for example like I like bourbon, and so I'd go drink. Previous to this, my kind of go-to drink was bourbon and ginger ale, fairly common drink. I now do it bourbon and club soda. If I get a bourbon and ginger ale, I literally can't drink it. Like it's so heavy and just like I'm like, wow, I used to like this. I mean, it's a weird thing, as you said. You adjust, and when you adjust, then it's really it's hard to go back. I mean, in a good way, right? As hard as it is to kick sugar, it's also once you're kind of away from the world of just adding sugar to everything, you also don't even want to.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I'm curious, did you ever try the metformin or were
Oh
you ever
yeah,
actually,
absolutely.
oh, really? Okay.
Oh yeah,
What happened
absolutely.
with that?
It's just, metformin, the reason that it's a popular diabetes drug is because it does a very good job. What it basically does, the operative effect, is it tells your liver to stop producing sugar, basically. And your liver is the primary source of most sugar in your blood. So it basically tells your liver to chill out, more or less. I mean, I'm giving a very non-scientific version of that, uh, but anyway, uh, what you call it, the drug metformin is basically the same as the supplement berberine. They're operatively identical to each other. And so you can kick metformin out of your life and now you have no prescription drugs and just buy from GNC some berberine and you're in business. It'll have the same effect. And for me now, I don't even need any of that stuff, but that's because I've gotten enough insulin resistance out of my life that it's not really necessary. But when I was first trying to get my A1C down, absolutely, I filled those metformin prescriptions, and I kept doing that for a long time until I could eventually get it to a place where I went with berberine for a long time, and I found berberine to be exactly identical to metformin. and a lot cheaper and easier in many ways. But even then, like I said, I've largely I try, like I said, I don't really like I'm about to go on this business trip. I'll be gone for like 10 days. I am happy to go grab my toiletry bag, throw it in my suitcase, and not count the number of pills in it, right? To just be able to go and not
Mm.
think about, oh golly, I've got to have my prescriptions and blah 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 blah. Like that was the goal I was setting for myself, was to live like what I would consider a normal person, like my younger self. And so there, like I said, at first I used metformin, then I switched to berberine. I even tried, and like, look, I'm a science person. I'll try anything that's got some backing to it for a little while and see whether it works for me. I even did the whole. I write about it in the book, the cinnamon thing. So there was a whole thing. It was making the rounds a few years ago that cinnamon would help lower your A1C,
Okay.
and but you had to have a teaspoon of it a day. I will just tell you, I would rather mainline insulin than do another teaspoon a day of cinnamon
Uh,
because it's a desiccant. So when you take it, just try it sometime. Just
you just dry by itself?
yeah, it is the worst thing in the whole world. I mean, I did it for 30 days just to be like, all right, I'll try the science on this. I'll be a good boy. I'll do it. Right. So I did it. I choked that stuff down every day for a month. And I was like, I don't care what this does. It turned out it didn't do anything for me.
Okay.
And the reason my doc said, and this is where it's good to having access to a doc you can actually ask questions of. She's like, look, your A1C is so low already that it probably does have that effect, but you were already in a normal to low A1C anyway, so that you didn't have any improvement to get.
Mm.
Um,
You're just doing it for fun.
well, I was doing it because I try. I'm a big believer in science. I'm a science person. That's why I don't dog on doctors or any of that sort of stuff. I believe in science and I believe in medicine. But I also, because I believe in science and believe in medicine, I don't believe anything that I don't try.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why I like berberine. I was like, it's supposed to be the same as metformin and do the same thing. I was like, all right, well, let's try it. We'll kick the metformin, wait 30 days, try the berberine, see if the effect is the same. Um,
And
and
it
that's
was?
to me, like some people I've been on interviews with will ask me, so why should we believe you? You're not a doctor. What the hell do you know? And my answer to that is don't. There's a whole chapter on studies I bet my life on. Read them. Don't believe me. Check it yourself. That's what science is. And that to me is a big part.
Mm. Yeah. I also think there's something very credible about someone who went through it and did the self experimenting versus someone who read about it, and
Right. Yeah. I had to walk though. I had to choke down the 30 days of cinnamon to
right.
know that it doesn't it helped, but I guess, but I wouldn't do it again.
Was there anything else that you tried as far as trends or anything that maybe you can help people avoid wasting their time on?
So I had mixed results with intermittent fasting. For me, that wasn't as useful. For me, that didn't work. I've read a lot of stuff that says for some people it's magic. For me, that wasn't that helpful. Um, and so I skipped that one, but I did try it. I tried about, heck, I probably did that for 90, 120 days, something like that. And I didn't, my numbers didn't change and I didn't feel any better or worse. So I was like, this seems like a little more thought than I really want to put into things. So I skipped that. I tried that. I tried, like I said, the cinnamon stuff. I have tried different varieties of little supplements and stuff. Berberine is the one that I can say really seemed to do the same thing as any drugs that you're going to find. Um, I also, I when I was going through this initially, Dexcoms didn't exist, the little continuous glucose monitor things. If I went through this today, like if I was back in 2017, but it was now, I probably would use those. And there are pluses and minuses in my mind to that sort of thing. The plus is that you really can get a fine-tuned sense of, I eat X and X does this, and I can see it instantly on my phone, right? The downside is you can start chasing the numbers And the A1C number is the one that really matters. It's not because, like I said, your blood sugar is constantly doing this. It's constantly going up and down. In a normal, like a normal, healthy, non-diabetic adult, or certainly late teen, it's still going right. And so I felt like the Dexcom would be overload of information, but it would be useful. It'd be nice to know. Like my doctor and I were talking about this a few months ago. I went to do my annual checkup or whatever, or in my case, twice annual, and she was talking about she had tried one for a while, and she's not diabetic, but she just wanted to see what it was like, and
Mm.
she noticed that in her case, potato-based foods really didn't do very much to her blood sugar, but that rices and stuff like white grains really knocked her out. And so for her, she had just say, and everybody's a little bit different, right? Everybody's got, we generally are the same, but there's some differences. And so for her, she found it helped her find some of those differences in a useful way. For me, that's one thing I wish I had had the time to try then. It didn't exist at that time. So that was useful. But again, I would say it's a system, right? You have to live in a system. And that was my thing is this, I needed to set up a system that I could do every day. That could just be my background home and I didn't have to think about it anymore. And that is why it was so important to do it that way. And I worry about like a Dexcom or something like that would give me so much data that I'd start like zooming in on it and be like, oh, this is exactly the thing I need to pay attention to.
Mhm.
So yeah,
I want to hear about exactly what's part of your system, but I also want to preface it by for the listener just to keep in mind what you just said, which is it's going to be a little bit different for each person. I think there's some
absolutely.
self-experimenting that needs to happen. But I am curious to hear because you've went through this, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are either wanting to beat diabetes or they have a loved one or someone they care about that has diabetes and they want to help them. So, what does your system look like exactly?
Okay. So the basics of it go like this. Um, I try to make a 1-to-1 ratio of soluble fiber by gram with sugar by gram, added sugar in particular. And so what that means is on a practical level, so breakfast this morning, I'll just run through like a normal day, right? And
Perfect.
so that what that means is in my breakfast foods, I'm looking for things where the soluble fiber number is higher than the added sugar number. And so this morning I had my wife makes this oatmeal casserole with fruit in it. It's a recipe that's in my book. It's delicious. And I'm a big believer, speaking of systems, ease of use equals use, which is a thing out of the tech industry where I work. But it's really true. So the simplest possible thing you can eat for breakfast in my house is that oatmeal casserole. It's the fastest, easiest thing. It's right there, 30 seconds in the microwave, magic breakfast. So that has at least 3 or 4 more grams of soluble fiber in it than it does sugar. And so that's a nice, easy start to the day. For lunch, I will do the same thing. I'll have some, and again, you're going to see this in this system, which is I'm always trying to get the soluble fiber number to be higher than the added sugar or the sugar equivalent. And there's a index that you can just Google up on any food called the glycemic index or GI. You get a GI number for any food. Anything you can name is on the GI list. And this is a scientist out of Toronto that did this in the 80s. And what it does is it guides you to know, and after a while, you get to know intimately which foods have more sugar in them than others. And I am consistently looking to preload at the beginning of the meal soluble fiber as much as I possibly can. Now, people ask, and this is a very legit question part of this, well, how much soluble fiber are we talking about? So, in a day, I will have on average probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 16 grams of soluble fiber, which frankly is not a lot. But I will also pair that with having significantly less than 16 grams of added sugar. And that's the key, is making your soluble fiber numbers higher than your sugar numbers. That's
Mm.
the system, if you will, is to just get educated to the point where it's just part of your background hum. And that's why one of the other things I do on Instagram a lot is I go into the grocery store and I go down the aisle and we look at food labels. And I have a whole chapter on how to read them. It takes like 2 seconds. This is like I'm a really, really lazy person, generally speaking. So I will do the least amount of work possible. And in this case, if I got to go, like I'm going to travel, right? I'm going to California tonight for work. When I get there, um, I'm not at home. So I will have to eat out at restaurants or at the buffet at the hotel breakfast tomorrow morning or whatever. And when I do that, by knowing what's got soluble fiber in it and what has lots of sugar in it, I will be able to just quickly go through and pick those foods without really thinking too hard about it. Because again, this is, I happen to be going on a business trip. I'm out of my element. I'm not going to have all of the stuff that I have at home that makes this easy for me, which is why this system is so important that it's systemic, is that I can do this on the road when I have to travel. And so that's the basics of it, is knowing what's soluble fiber, what's sugar, and then making sure you got more soluble fiber than you have sugar.
And then before we actually started the interview, you spoke about other aspects that played a role in beating diabetes,
Sure.
maybe movement or.
Yeah. So I play sports. Play about 4 days a week of volleyball. So I play a lot of high intensity cardio sport, right? But honestly, and that's what we were talking about earlier, there's a great study earlier this year that showed that up to as little as 5 minutes of exercise, moderate exercise, meaning walking, was enough to lower your blood sugar after a meal by 25%, which is a hell of an outcome and not one I would ever have thought in a million years would be the case. So now, what I do a lot of times, so because I'm a systems person, I have a dog and I have to walk the dog. So what I did was I moved walking the dog from the end of the evening to right after dinner. And so what I get out of that is this little habit where I walk out I finish a meal, we clean up the dishes, and I immediately go walk the dog. And by walking the dog around the block, I knock my blood sugar down, that little 20-25% pop. And that just makes it easier. But again, and this is, it's called habit stacking, which some of your listeners will have heard of and some of them will not. But basically, the short and the long of habit stacking is pairing a thing that you want to do, something aspirational, to get your blood sugar down, paired with something you're definitely going to do. So in my case, I got to walk the dog anyway. The dog's going to get walked tonight. So if I do it right after dinner, though, then I've knocked my blood sugar down a little bit and I've still accomplished the habit that I have to do anyway, which is walk the dog. So I try to do as many of those, like I try to habit stack as much as I can to help self reinforce my own aspirational goal of keeping my blood sugar down. Because that's one of the things people ask, like, how do you stick to something? And really, at the end of the day, if it becomes like if you habit stack, and the other part of it, the other half of that is referred to as temptation bundling, which I was talking about earlier. I want to have a piece of king cake. I'm gonna go knock down a whole bunch of beans at red beans and rice time, but skip the rice. Have a whole bunch of beans before I go and I have the thing that I want, which is a piece of king cake. So that's temptation bundling, where you bundle a good thing and a bad thing, and hopefully the good thing outweighs the bad thing. But these things are how that system works and how it becomes a hum in your life that you don't notice after a while. So yeah, that's the long and the short of it.
There's one person I think of that's so close to me in my life, and I want to send her all the information all the time about, because the way that you lay it out, it's so simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can travel and you can live your life like you always do without it being disrupted by having to keep an eye on these things. I mean, I'm sure you don't even think twice about it now going through your day.
No, in fact, like I said, if I, and look, and I'm not a, you must have discipline. You must have, like I am like the biggest pushover from temptation. And
Mhm.
so if it isn't systemic, if I didn't set this up in a way that I could just do it all the time, then I wouldn't do it. Right? So that's the big thing. And the other thing, and I have a whole chapter on this as well, forgiveness. I screw up sometimes. Absolutely. And I remember this was just an epic fail. I write about these things in the book. You've probably seen them, Nature's Own Bakery, the little fig bar looking things,
Oh
and they're
yeah.
delicious, right?
Mhm.
And I used to think, I was like, oh, the figs have tons of soluble fiber in them. So I eventually, so I had my office stocked with them. So I'd be like the easiest snack, right? Because ease of use equals use. So I go stock the office with these things. And I read the label finally, and they're worse than an Oreo.
Yeah.
You would never think because it looks like it's labeled as a health food and it looks like a
Mhm.
health food, but it's totally terrible for you. And I just like, you just gotta like, all right, man, you got me, and I just gotta move on. And that
Mhm.
self-forgiveness, I feel, is a really important part in, doing this 8 years. Um, if I couldn't forgive myself for my lapses, we wouldn't get anywhere. I would have given up a long time ago. That's why I don't call it a diet. It's not a diet, it's a way of living. Because if it was a diet, it would be a thing I would give up eventually. I'm never going to give it up. I'm just going to keep going because it's just the normal way I live. And that is, I think, for your friend, that's the big difference. Is you're changing the way that you live, not changing your diet, even though it is almost entirely food based. It's just if you think of it as a diet, it's temporary and you won't do it for long. This is I'm going to try and live this way. And what I would say to anybody trying this, give it 4 months. You can do anything for 3 or 4 months. Anything. I mean, even myself, and I'm like I said, I'm a big wimp in the temptation department. In the 90s, I tried the Atkins diet, if you remember that one, and I stuck to it for 4 months, and I couldn't wait to get off it. I love carbs. I love, the full
Mhm.
feeling of having real food in me, and I just couldn't do the Atkins thing. So this one I could do, and so it didn't require me to do extreme stuff that I couldn't stick to because I'm just not disciplined enough for that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
I admire people who are. I'm just not one of them. So I had to come up with something that people who don't have the kind of discipline that I don't have either could actually do it.
Yeah, I learned that lesson too about for me, it was protein bars and looking
Mm.
at the ingredient label and
Oh my God.
noticing the sugar is just as much as like a candy bar. And so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. You
very
look at
important.
that, and I looked at one yesterday. Where was I? I was somewhere, and I was at somebody's office at a meeting, and I'm like flipping through their little snack thing in their conference room because I was hungry. I'm like looking, and there's like a little thing of like mixed fruits and nuts and stuff. I'm like, oh, that'll probably be good. I flipped the label over, I look in the back, and it had 19 grams of added sugar in this little thing. I'm like,
Wow.
that's 6 sugar packets in this little tiny thing.
Oh,
I was like, oh my God. I think I'll skip that one. Thank you. But
mm,
it's shocking. That's why, like I said, there's a whole chapter on reading labels because once you know how to read the labels, it's like super easy to find these things. But at first, I was just, like I said, I made a blunder for like a year eating those damn fig bars, fooling myself that they were good for me. But that's where self forgiveness comes in. I just got to move. All right, screwed that one up. Move on.
mhm.
Because if you torture, you can. We all do it, right? We all torture ourselves and tell ourselves we suck and can't keep to things and blah 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 blah. And that's why you didn't ask about this, but it's an important part of this story. I never intended to write this book. Honestly, I was happy going along my way, and I wasn't really ever thinking to write it. I had a good friend of mine, have a very similar experience to myself. Except in his case, Tim went into the doctor, and he's a vet, and so he's at the VA, and his A1C was at 13. 13 is go to the hospital time. And they wanted to stick him in a hospital and pump him full of insulin. And he was like, oh crap. So he calls me up and he's like, dude, this happened. What did you do? Because he knew me and knew that I had done this. And I was like, okay, I'll text you. I'll write it down. So I started writing it down in a text. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to be enough. So I sat down and wrote an email, and the email was good, but it was still not structured. So then I actually sat down and wrote a book. Um, and,
You wrote it
and
for your
it,
friend.
yeah, well, and I talk about this in the book. So Tim dropped. his A1C from 13.1, I think, 13.1, 13.4, I don't remember, but very, very, very like dangerously high to 4.9 in under 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, and he stayed low and all with food, just food. That's it. And is off drugs, doesn't take any of that stuff anymore. But he does the same thing, lots and lots and lots of soluble fiber, and it makes a big, big difference. And he's a contractor, and so the thing about contractors, they have a very tough. They're maybe the hardest case possible because they live in their vehicles and they're constantly going from job site to job site. And so sitting down and having like regular meals is really not an easy thing for folks who do that for a living. And so he's been a real test case of like finding ways to stick to this stuff without with having 7-Eleven be the easiest thing near you, right? And so he's managed to do it, and lots of credit and kudos to him. But it was my friend's experience that convinced me to write this down more than my own.
That's amazing. So he did that though, following your guidance.
Yeah, he did exactly what I do, and that's what I was like. Maybe there's other people that should know about this stuff, and that's when I was like, well, let me see about turning this into a book.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're the perfect person for it to come from, I feel like, because uh you're not you seem very normal. And I mean that in the best way
No,
possible.
I am very I have a very boring life, and I live like a normal person, and I just don't. I'm not an extremist, and I know that that makes this a less sexy message. Like people love an extreme message. They love it. They love all you've got to do is do this one thing and do it all day, every day, blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't want to sell a bunch of crap. I just want people to understand here's some way you can control your life and
Mhm.
get back what you had, which is the ability to just go around like a normal person and live your life. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm not an extremist, nor do I have an exceptional amount of discipline. That's for darn sure. So, but nevertheless, this is a way that the average schmo can do a low sugar, non-sugar, practically high soluble fiber diet that really saves their life in the sense of saves the life that they had. Because everybody, you can make like my father. My father's an unrepentant type 2 diabetic, and he is a you know what? If I need to take more insulin to have chocolate cake, then shoot me up, baby. Uh,
Oh,
and so I have an example in my life of somebody doing it that way, and you can live that way. It's just he can't go anywhere without insulin.
mm,
He literally can't travel for more than a day without making sure he's got a refrigerated space to keep insulin shots in. And that
yeah.
for me was the part that I just was never going to work for me. So I don't know about your friend, but I do understand the desire to be normal. That's what drove all of my actions.
Right. Chris, I have two closing questions for you, but before I ask them, is there anything at all that we did not cover that you feel is important to share?
No, I think we hit the high points. So thank you. I appreciate you guiding me through all of the discussion there.
Oh, good. Okay. So my first question for you, what is your number one health tip? So whether that's diet, nutrition, mindset, spiritual, emotional, physical, the one piece of advice you would like everyone to know.
The thing that I would want everyone to know, that's a great question. Well, I'm going to say really at the end of the day, just being willing and able to open your mind to read about what works. Other people have done this. Like, I didn't come up with anything that's in my book. I read what others did, others' studies, others' ideas. I just put them into practice. And so, opening your mind to thinking and reading and understanding the wisdom that others have gathered is really the key.
Stay open-minded.
Yeah, it's basically having an open mind and willing to try.
Yeah. My final question for you will be a more personal one. You choose a number 1 through 100, and that will tell us which question it is.
All right. Ooh, golly. Let's go with 70. You should have one of those the little four things that click, 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 you know, like you fold the paper and you make the thing and it's like,
Yeah,
and kill back. This is your question.
that would be great. Gosh, now I'm gonna wonder what those are called.
I can't remember what they're called, but when you're kids, that's a common thing. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's not origami, is it?
No,
Origami,
it's
no.
it's golly. Now I'm gonna have to Google it when we get off.
Yeah.
All right, 70.
Number 70. What's a belief you once held that you no longer agree with?
Oh, that's a good one. All right. So I used to believe that I was an exceptionally healthy person, that none of the rules applied to me because I exercised a lot, a lot. Like I said, I play sports 4 days a week. Um, and that I could therefore make the trade between exercise and eating badly. And that is not true at all. You can do no exercise and eat well, and that's way better for you than exercising like crazy and eating badly. And that's a belief that's what landed me with an A1C of 9.1, is thinking that my 4 days a week of exercise somehow magically offset the crappy eating I was doing.
Mm. Yeah, I heard a quote. I might butcher it, but I think it's something like you can't outwork a bad diet.
True, spot on, absolutely.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
can't. I mean, I used to, like, my aunt was a one of big adults in my life she was a go on the treadmill for 2 hours to offset her giant pizzas. You know, she eat a whole large pizza by herself. And I used to think that that was a legit way of thinking, and it's completely wrong.
Mhm.
You could be like the laziest schlub in the world, but if you eat well, you'll still be healthier than somebody who exercises like a maniac but eats terribly. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, that's a belief that almost that did me a lot of damage in my life, honestly. And I
Mhm.
do not hold that belief anymore, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing insight to come to, an amazing realization to have, because who has the energy to work out constantly? You can just
Yeah, it's
eat
actually
a,
easier to just eat well.
you're right. Thank you so much, Chris. This has been amazing. You're so easy to talk to. I love the message that you're sharing, and I honestly, I'm gonna get the book for the person I'm talking to, because I think the message resonates, with the average person, and that's who needs to hear it. And thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation.